This is a generic headlight assembly and fairing I've used in the past. You can get them on Amazon pretty cheap. The reason I like them, they're pretty easy to work on different bikes. They come with some straps to mount for all different sizes of front suspension. Dual LEDs up front with integrated turn signals, which I like, because in the unlikely event I allow the bike down, you don't break your turn signal. So we're gonna go ahead and swap that out. This thing's old, it's beat up, it's been laid down. We're gonna kind of make it a little more modern, a little bit more clean up front. Take this fairing off. There's one 6mm in the back that takes this little bracket off. Go ahead and pull that off. And then we have two screws that mount to our suspension right here, our forks. These are just Phillip heads. Phillips with a washer on each side. Go ahead and pull this entire rubber mount off. Get in there with a screwdriver and kind of pry it off. See a lot better from this side. It's just kind of a simple loop. Then we can access this back of this headlight assembly. So here's the trick from here. There's not going to be a really easily accessible wiring diagram, so you're going to have to see what it hooks up to for each of the lights. So what I usually do is take this apart and I run a test light on each one to make sure I have my low beams, my high beams, my running lights, my turn signals all set up. The last thing you want to do is hook everything together and get the bike on the road and realize nothing works, like I've definitely never done before. So the first thing I like to do is figure out which positions the switches are supposed to go to and where the ground is. And I usually do that just by testing. You can look up online, find some diagrams. Half the time these old bikes, someone's been in here and they don't match anymore. So we're going to set our voltmeter to ohms. We're going to make sure we have a good ground. Now what I usually do is I hook one end of my voltmeter to some clips, hook it to a ground, and I go ahead and test that ground to make sure it reads 0 or low resistance, right? You can see right here we got 1.6 ohms. That's a good ground, right? So now we pulled this connector apart. We're going to figure out which one of these is the ground. And it is that white wire. So we know that's ground. We're going to go ahead and set our voltmeter to volts DC, which is this emblem right here. The squiggly means AC, dotted line here means DC.
Certainly didn't try it on the squiggly first, accidentally.
Nope, I would never do such a thing. So we're going to go ahead and set it to the running light, and we'll figure out which wire it is. So we got 12 volts at this blue wire. The blue wire is the wire for our running light. We're going to go to our low beam. We know it's not the blue, we know it's not the white. It's either going to be the yellow, which it's not, or the red. Of course, the last one I test. So we know that's our low beam. Kick her over to high, and now we should have voltage at this yellow wire. And there we go. So now we know yellow is high, red's low, blue is running light, white's ground. In this case, I'm lucky enough to have this connector fit up, but I'm willing to bet the pins are not in the right order. We're going to go ahead and find out. Key on, switch is off, nothing's on, that's good. We're going to go running light, and we have our running light. You all right?
Yeah.
We're going to go with the running light. The running light is right. That's surprising. We're going to go low beam. That looks like high beam to me. And we're going to go high beam, and that looks like low beam. So we're going to go ahead and have to repin this light and just swap the high beam and the low. And honestly, 1 out of 3, that's pretty good odds. So if you look on the inside of this connector, there's little locking tabs here. You're going to go ahead and take a little pin tool like this, push down that locking tab. Once you get it inserted, you're going to want to push the pin down. You can pull the wire, but if you do it wrong, you'll pull the wire right out of the crimp. Ask me how I know. This is what can happen if you do it wrong. So this side should be just fine. Go ahead and pry that pin back. And then push out the pin from this side, and then boom. So I'll go ahead and have to recrimp this red wire to this pin. We'll go ahead and slide it back in place. I know the white wire is going to go back here, so I'm going to go ahead and just do that. Line it up, lock it in place. Alright, so I went ahead and expanded the pins of this connector here. We're going to just go ahead and recrimp them in. Cinch it to the wire. on the insulation side first here. Nice and secure, and then we're going to go with the wire side. Go ahead and give it the tug test. Make sure it doesn't come off. Make sure this locking tab's out and ready to do its job. The pin back in. You hear it click, and it's in. Alright, now let's go ahead and test it and see if I didn't screw something up. Alright, we got nothing on. We got running light. We got low beam. We got high beam. Did something right. We're going to go ahead and take these turn signals off. Like I said, some guy, definitely not me, lays down their bike every now and again, or often. And turn signals don't tend to survive. So this one's got integrated turn signals. Let's just get them out of the way, clean up the look of the bike a little bit. And we got these two push pin connectors. So the first thing you're going to notice is the connectors here don't match. But because I don't plan on using these connectors, I'm going to cut them off here with little slack to no slack, because I'm never going to worry about using these. Now the next fun part is figuring out which wire goes where. I kept them separate when I clipped them, which you're going to want to do, so I know what side is at least paired together. The difference is they're going to share a ground, and you can hook these up backwards. If you hook up the ground side to the hot side and the hot side to the ground side, all sorts of weird stuff's going to happen. It's not just a straight positive ground connection like you think. Like I said, there's a shared ground, and you got to get them on the right side. So we're going to go ahead and go back to our color-coded Gator wire connectors. We're going to clip one side to one wire and one to the other. Then we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have the right side blinker illuminating. So I don't know which is which. Like I said, these wire diagrams they come with are non-existent. So we're going to go ahead and test the two wires from each connector. Make sure they're not touching. Key on and turn the blinker to the right. And we got lucky. And this is how it'll look when we get it hooked up. So we're going to go ahead and remove the pins that we want from our old OEM lights. Go ahead and strip these. And I don't know if you guys have seen these before, but they make these really handy heat shrink solder connectors. They're a little bit more stable than the typical butt connectors, and I've been using them a lot lately. Just nothing but good luck about them. The way these work, we're going to slide one wire in here to the point where the solder is. Go ahead and slide this in. We're going to take a heat gun and we're going to secure these two together. So again, we're going to want to make sure we have some crossover with the wires. Make sure that little metal solder is right in the center. We're going to take our heat gun. We're going to heat her up. I usually go to cinch the wires in place first. This little band here is going to cinch on each wire. Once they grab the wire, then I really just hit that solder, and you'll see that solder start to run. And you'll see it run up the wire. You can kind of see that happening here. Once that solder runs and gets all nice and tight, we've got our connection. See that solder run? You know we got it nice and hot. Now that we're all back together, let's go ahead and test it. Make sure we hooked everything up the right way. Running lights, low beam, high beam. There's our right side, and there's our left side. Now we'll go ahead and mount this thing up and get the bike on the road. Now we're going to go ahead and pull this mounting bracket off for our old turn signals. It shares the same bracket as our gauge cluster. 8mm bolt here. Be careful not to pinch any wires. It can happen pretty easily if you're not paying attention. Alright, so we came across a problem with these original straps they came with. They're cheap. As soon as we put them on, they're already weak and falling apart. I had not had this problem with this before in the past, but now it's something I'll watch out for. So the big difference we have with these holes from the original fairing is these holes were a lot larger, so we're going to have to make these holes larger to fit our old straps in place. Go ahead and give that a shot. That's one side in. There we go. As you can see, these things take a little bit more work. It's not like an OEM KTM part, but it doesn't cost the same either. It might take a little bit of work, but we'll get her together. All right, so a little bit of wobbles here. The top clamp's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and zip tie it to the back with this wiring harness. We should be good to go. So I moved these soft clamps up as high as they could go, and I secured one zip tie to the base of this headlight, and I went through the top of this frame. Got it nice and tight, kind of cinched it all together. Last thing you want is this thing rattling all over and making a bunch of noise. But that seemed to work out good for this one. And there you go. Last thing to do, remove the protective covering. Go ahead and try her out. There we go. Now I'll go ahead and put our two last screws in, call her a day. I don't know about you, but I'd say that's a pretty big upgrade compared to how the bike looked like from the front before.